I see the Peter. You know I got the Jones for my own Rashida. Can you put me on with the Nagarita? She stay on my dome, she gon' pull on me, pull like weed, entice me. She my queen. Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. She my queen. Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. She my queen. Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
KBLA Talk 1580. Let's talk about some Queen things. It's the Cleopatra controversy, emblematic of the whitewashing and anti-blackness that is present in not just modern days, but ancient history and our understanding and exploration of it. Here to help us unpack that and understand that, he's an attorney. He's been a practicing attorney for 42 years, entered the legal profession as an intern in the Civil Rights Department of the Justice Department. He's worked at the DA's office in LA, worked for legal aid for a minute, and in private practice. But beyond his work as an attorney and actually city attorney for the city of Compton at one time, he is a noted historian, known particularly for his work around Africans in antiquity. Attorney LeGrand Clegg, good morning.
Good morning, Dominique. How are you?
I'm blessed. How are you?
Also blessed.
Over here doing Queen things.
Oh, absolutely.
So I feel like I've talked to you over the years on various radio stations about the whitewashing of history. But there's a recent series, and you've been doing work on this, so we'll expand on that. But there's a recent series, and I've recommended it, by Jada Pinkett Smith. She's the executive producer. She's also the voiceover talent on it. It's like a documentary/drama series, really well done, called African Queens. The first one, Nzinga, talked about Nzinga. The second one, in these, they're like limited series, is Queen Cleopatra, and it's they're African queens. She's depicting them as black, but this particular installment has created an international incident, hasn't it?
Oh yes, indeed. It created in the spring, and let me say, I was so very proud of Jada Smith, as well as Adele James, who's the actress who played Cleopatra.
Oh yeah, she's beautiful, and she does such a great job.
Yeah. And, you know, it's an amazing 60,000 people signed a petition calling for the cancellation of Cleopatra. An attorney by the name of Mahmoud El Samari filed a lawsuit against Netflix about it. Social media exploded with anti-Jada Pinkett comments. As a matter of fact, I read somewhere that 240,000 people had written in attacking Jada Pinkett Smith. And Adele James received death threats. It's incredible.
What? I missed that part of the story. The actress received death threats for portraying Cleopatra?
Yes, she did. And I read that somewhere. I'm so sorry that I can't provide you the official source, but I most certainly read it. And she made the comment, look, if you're that offended, don't watch the documentary.
Right.
But let me say this. There is certainly some issue as to whether Cleopatra was black. She was one of the last queens and long after Egypt had declined. But what is interesting, Dominique, is that black people, as well as whites in America, generally perceived her to have been black, and I'm going to tell you why. I'll give you the evidence as to that having happened. First of all, our mothers and grandmothers taught us that she was black, among black people. Secondly, I don't know whether, you're very young, but back in the early 70s, they had a floating barge in Caesar's Palace, and it was entitled Cleopatra's Barge. And all of the bartenders were black women. In 1968, Los Angeles, the art community in Los Angeles held a beautiful drama. It was absolutely magnificent at MacArthur Park, and it was entitled Cleopatra and Mark Antony, I think. And Diana Sands, the late actress, played Cleopatra. In addition to that, many of your readers have probably seen the Anheuser-Busch Corporation's artistic renditions, The Great Kings of Africa. In that popular series, Cleopatra is depicted, Cleopatra the Seventh is the Cleopatra we speak of. She's also depicted black there. What I'm saying is that, in point of fact, Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy, and at the time, around 30 BC, at that time, the Greeks had taken over Egypt, and they were dominant, and everybody knows that they were white. Well, the confusion occurs because Cleopatra's mother is unknown, and so that left a lot of speculation, because if she were Egyptian, then quite naturally, she may well have been black or Negroid. And given the American one-drop rule, she would have been considered black.
All right. Go ahead.
Oh, I understand why people take exception to it, but the visceral hostility makes no sense, particularly since... Go right ahead.
Well, I mean, yes and no, Attorney LeGrand Clegg. I remember having this conversation with the late Runoko Rashidi. He did not feel that Cleopatra was black, or he said that we don't have proof that she is. Just pretty much what you said. We don't know who her mama is. She could well have been what we would consider black, African mixed with Greek. But it's interesting to me that you mentioned the black portrayals, but the Hollywood portrayals are typically white. It's, Elizabeth Taylor, or I remember you and I talking about some Gods of Egypt movie where everybody's is white, even though it's in Egypt in ancient times. No one seems to have a problem with the whitewashing of Cleopatra and the entire rest of the African nation of Egypt. But when we do a portrayal of her as black, and she could possibly have been black, all of a sudden it's an international incident.
That's true. And black people, because of the besmirchment of our people over the last 500 years, claiming we're genetically inferior, claiming we have history, claiming we're Johnny come lately, all of that. When we step forward to show the proof of who we were, a mighty people in antiquity, then people deny it, and they get very nervous about it. An example of that is, I mentioned that this attorney had filed a lawsuit against Netflix about the documentary. Well, he's Arab. He's Arabic, or Arab. He's an Arab. And other Arabs like Zahi Hawass and others are very sensitive and claim when we claim that the ancient Egyptians, the indigenous ancient Egyptians were black Africans, which they most certainly were, they claim we're blackwashing history and taking their history. Which they don't understand.
I mean, but that's provably wrong. Arabs actually are colonizers. So how could they have... I mean, that would be like white people around here starting to try to take credit for First Nations people's history.
Exactly. That's the very point I make in the article I did on the subject. And my point is, the Arabs, as you point out, conquered Egypt in 641 AD, long after the Romans and the Greeks and the Assyrians and the Turks, everybody. But given that they're the latest people there and they've been there so long, and they rely on this tourist trade where people assume that they're the descendants from the ancient Egyptians, they're very sensitive when we raise these issues. Because we did a brochure which circulated and was, mentioned in the New York Times, et cetera, where we stated that the native ancient Egyptians were black Africans, not Arab invaders. Well, they became livid over that, because it doesn't matter that it's true. It's that what they fear is an expose which disconnects them from a history to which they had no connection in the first place. And so that is why we have to be adamant about our position on this. Never
mind the facts. We're talking about the Cleopatra controversy. Certainly it goes beyond Jada Pinkett Smith's fine series, The African Queens. If you haven't seen it, I suggest that you do. It's entertaining and historically based. It's their dramatizations mixed with historical observations, scholars. I suggest you check it out. And if you have some free time, maybe write a letter to Netflix saying, Jada, you did the doggone thing. You're listening to KBLA. We are your ancestors' favorite radio station.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, this is LA City Councilman Curran Price, inviting you to the 28th Annual Central Avenue Jazz Fest on September the 23rd from 11 to 7 p.m. For nearly 3 decades, the Central Avenue Jazz Festival has paid homage to the legendary Central Avenue and its influence on jazz history. Jazz, blues, and Latin jazz will be featured on 3 stages of music. Co-headlining are Hubert Laws with special guest Eloise Laws and the Billy Childs Quartet featuring Sean Jones. The day includes plenty of food, merchants, and 4 pavilions focused on youth programming, art, health and wellness, and public resources. Parking is limited, so Metro and rideshare are recommended. Hubert Laws with special guests Eloise Laws and the Billy Childs Quartet featuring Sean Jones. The day includes plenty of food, merchants, and 4 pavilions focused on youth programming, art, health and wellness, and public resources. For more information, visit CentralAveJazzFest.com. CentralAveJazzFest.com. See you on the 23rd.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like Watering Your Lawn During the Hottest Time of the Day and Leaky Faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Drip.
Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you earn at the end of your first year, which means... Wait, hold up. Question for the audio engineer.
Go ahead.
Did I read that right? Discover automatically doubles all your cash back?
Yeah, that's what the script says.
So if I get a Discover card right now, I can earn twice the cash back.
Apparently. Wait! Unlimited first-year cash back match, only from Discover. See terms and learn more at discover.com/match.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Talking with LeGrand Clegg. Yes, he's an attorney. He's also a noted authority in the fields of African and African American history and culture for well over 3 decades. He has a video production called When Black Men Ruled the World, by way of the Clegg videos, audio tapes, study guides, and websites. And Attorney LeGrand Clegg, we have a lot to unpack here. Somebody called in, asked me about the series. It is called The African Queens. It's on Netflix. Executive produced, and narrated by Jada Pinkett Smith. Although when you listen to it, you don't think Jada. She does such a great job. She brings out the information about these queens more than, making it all about her. But you said some of these Arab Egyptians, Arab Americans too, I guess, are taking the position that ancient Egyptian history belongs to them, even though they came in as colonizers or gentrifiers or whatever you want to call it. They're not the original residents. They were not there when the pyramids were built. They were not there when the pharaohs ruled Egypt, but they tried to obscure that. What is blackwashing?
Well, what to them it's our superimposing our group, the African people, on what they consider an Arab civilization. And, are claiming, for example, in this case, that Cleopatra was black. And it's absolute nonsense, because what has happened is, I'm trying to put it gently, because I hate to create conflict between people, but they have usurped the history of Africa. And as you said a minute ago, it would be tantamount or equivalent to white Americans claiming that they're descendants from the Aztecs. That's clearly not true, and nobody would be so absurd as to make such a claim. But the Arabs, because they've been there so long, and Egypt itself has become synonymous with Arab people today,
right?
And because they derive so much revenue from the tourist trade, they don't want a disconnect. Well, there has to be one if you're going to deal with history as it is. The people of Arabia have their history. It is not in Africa.
It's a really interesting history, too. But, right, I mean, and I think the Native American analogy is a good one because this is thousands of years hence, right? So it's probably too close for them to do it now in this country. But imagine 1,000 years from now, white people giving tours, of of the great Mayan pyramids and talking about how their ancestors built them and getting mad at Mayan indigenous descendant people for challenging that. It seems ridiculous, but that's exactly what's happening here, right?
It is. And you know what I would like, because I cannot praise Jada Pinkett enough for this courageous stand. And I want to share with your viewers, there is some evidence that suggests that Cleopatra indeed may have been black. And that was introduced by Hilke Thor of the Austrian Academy of Sciences. He stated that the remains of Princess Arsinoe, thought by many to have been the sister of Cleopatra VII, were discovered in a burial chamber in the Caesars Museum in Vienna, Austria, in 1929. And he states that he and other scientists that her sister was Negroid, that she was indeed black. And the Know Thyself Institute has produced I guess you'd call it a clip where the team evaluates the forensic evidence remaining of Arsinoe. And they stated, I want to quote this, Dominique, until recently, Cleopatra VII dynasty was thought to be Greek, European, and Caucasian. But some scholars now believe Cleopatra and her siblings had African blood. Our revelation backs up the controversial theory that the princess Arsinoe and therefore her sister Cleopatra had African blood. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of whether they shared the same mother, that kind of thing. But my point is that Jada Pinkett Smith, there's evidence to support her position, and she's chosen to accept that evidence and to put forward a documentary that bears it out. When people say she has no evidence and she's unscientific, that's nonsense. In other words, there can be disputes, but there is evidence to bear out her theory.
Right.
Follow me?
I mean, and even this conversation is an indication of science versus hysteria, because you started out by acknowledging that we don't know for sure that Cleopatra was black, but that means we don't know for sure that she wasn't. We don't know for sure that she was white, but that means we don't know for sure that she was. So why is it fine for, the gods of Egypt to all be white and for Cleopatra to be played by the blue-eyed, Elizabeth Taylor, but it's suddenly a problem when we go with the other hypothesis, and I think the depiction of Cleopatra, the documentary that Jada does, she does lay out the argument for why Cleopatra may have been black. And she doesn't rule out the fact that she might not have been. She just chooses to portray her and Arsinoe as such. And why not? I mean, I agree with you. Jada Pinkett Smith deserves a lot of accolades for that, because for literally decades and decades, probably a century, Hollywood has been portraying Egypt as white, Cleopatra as white, and finally someone gets something on the books, on the record, that's an actual documentary, but also very much, compelling and fun to watch, that gives an alternative viewpoint, one that, as you say, is supported by science. Why is that so important?
Well, you have to realize over the past 500 years, during which people of African descent were largely engaged, subjugated, and enslaved in the New World, science, religion, everyone came to produce propaganda suggesting that we're an inferior or subhuman group of people. Scientists claim we were genetically inferior and have small brains. The clergy claim we're the cursed sons of Ham. Historians claim we have no history. That's why even today, students who take history classes, they talk all around Africa as if Africa doesn't exist. Well, fortunately, what is happening now is all of this evidence is coming out. Even the young people online are revealing it, showing the outstanding contributions of Africans in antiquity that are almost magical in terms of achievement. And brilliant scholars like Billy Carson, whom I just learned about, are revealing even more, things that are beyond the pale. They're coming up with. And so we're breaking away from this period of half of a millennium of degrading, defaming, stereotyping black people and realizing, my God, they're the original people. They laid the foundation of civilization. We came from them. It reminds me of years ago, I saw The Planet of the Apes. And I remember at the end, because the apes, if I recall correctly, control the world. And at the end, some archaeologists discovered New York City. And they said, here's this great civilization. And mankind, you do right. Your culture came from mankind. You follow me? And the point is, that's what Western science is coming to grips with today. There's still a lot of liars out there. And see, we have to have the self-respect to say, we are going to define who we are. We're not allowing you to do that, especially since you come from a history of lies. And although there are more objective scientists today, they still are terrified of speaking outside the box. Let me give you an example of it. We're working, we're producing a new television station called Afropedia Black. And we have all these scientists who pointed out, as you allowed me to discuss earlier on the show, another day, the African presence in America before Columbus. The evidence is overwhelming. These huge stoneheads, Columbus's statements, the Native American, all that, they still reject it. And so when you see things like that, it's just like Trump's lies. You have to realize they're lies and move on. And that is why as I said, I cannot praise Jada Pinkett Smith enough. She's giving black women a source of pride and recognition. And what's interesting, too, let me say this. There's so many queens that preceded Cleopatra: Ashayet, Kawit, Amos Nefertari, Hatshepsut, Nefertiti. There's a whole line of black women who are unquestionably black that long preceded Cleopatra. Cleopatra, I would say, was like a Lena Horne type. Okay, beautiful woman, black and all that, but just she was highly mixed, if indeed she was Negroid at all. But the great queens who preceded her were unquestionably black, and some of the earliest great women in the world.
Yeah. And that's important. It is also true that Cleopatra has captured the popular imagination for centuries. And so having, as you say, putting out the historical possibility that she could well have been a black woman, and given her swagger, at least from a sociological standpoint, it certainly seems likely. I think it's important. But this idea of lying and whitewashing or anti-blackness among historians is so problematic because we think of historians as scientists. We think of archaeologists as scientists. Well, they are. And so when they say, oh, no, the ancient Egyptians were Arab, even though that's not supported by the facts, it's so sort of normal and tempting to just be like, oh, okay, we're wrong, because the scientists say, King Tut was white, because the scientists say Cleopatra was white, because the scientists are telling us that ancient Egypt was Arab, even though the Arabs didn't even march in during the time of the pharaohs. So how do you deal with that, the lying coming from scientists and historians?
Well, you're right. They have an awe of respectability and reverence because of their position.
Right.
I was 19 when I first learned of Black history. And what's interesting is it was this month, 60 years ago. 60 years ago. And it's interesting when I think about it, at that young age, I was immediately able to dismiss Western science. I mean, let me say this. I still had trepidation. I still had trepidation. I was somewhat nervous about it, but I felt that the black scholars whose work I was reading were accurate, and they largely relied on white scholars who told the truth. We have to come to grips with the lies. Just again, I mentioned Donald Trump because he's so widely mentioned today. Of course, because he's running for president,
and he's a liar.
But the New York Times, that's right. The New York Times. I don't know if you recall the number of lies he told, but I think it was like 39,000 or something like that.
Yes.
We have to understand that Western science is not science. It's a white supremacist propaganda machine, and it degrades black people in the course of its revelations and investigations and research.
Okay, we're going to continue that thought after news, traffic, and sports. Western science isn't science. It's a sweeping statement. I mean, we rely on Western science for a lot of things. So I want you to dig a little deeper, Attorney LeGrand Clegg, historian LeGrand Clegg, on what you just said when we continue on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In California, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors is agreeing to a $4.75 million settlement to resolve a civil rights lawsuit. A black man filed the lawsuit in June of 2021 claiming 6 LA County Sheriff's deputies severely beat him during a traffic stop in Inglewood in May of 2020. The man's attorney says her client was hit in the face as many as 44 times, leaving him unable to see out of one eye. The number of Lahaina wildfire victims identified to the public is up to 61. One more name was added to the list Tuesday. The 85-year-old man was a Lahaina resident. Maui police say 7 more people have been identified. There are 115 confirmed deaths. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
What will you find at Macy's Backstage? Here's a hint. Fall finds for $25 and under, like sharp blazers, cozy sweaters, cargo pants, jackets, and more. Find the latest trends and new arrivals at a Macy's Backstage store near you.
Is this the takedown? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. Another story is developing about racial discrimination in the NFL, and this time there are 2 NFL owners who might have shown their true feelings with comments to the media. Jim Trotter, a longtime and highly respected NFL reporter, is suing the NFL for racial discrimination and failure to respond to allegations of insensitive comments allegedly made by Buffalo Bills owner Terry Pegula and Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. In 2020, Pegula allegedly told a reporter, and I quote, "If black players don't like it here, they should go back to Africa and see how bad it is." Trotter was interviewing Jones in 2020 with another reporter when Jones allegedly told them, quote, "If blacks feel some kind of way, they should buy their own team and hire who they want to hire." Much more to come on this story. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, Tavis Smiley here. I know you've been hearing the promo over and over again about our event this Saturday, about contracts and how you can get in the contract pipeline. Just want to remind you, it is this Saturday. Space is limited. Here's Dion Rambo to tell you more about what you can expect this Saturday.
Yo, what's up? This is Rambo, and again, you know the 3 words, contracts, contracts, contracts. This Saturday, there's one place you have to go right now, KBLA1580.com. If you want to see us talk about contracts, talk about grants, you got Caltrans who made all this possible. I'm super excited. You guys all know Rambo's been in the community fighting for you. Now, we got Tavis fighting alongside. This is huge. KBLA1580.com this Saturday. See you guys.
The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center proudly presents its 25th annual Real Black Men Short Film Showcase, September 22nd through September 24th. Join us for the opening night celebration on Friday, September 22nd, and enjoy the short film showcase featuring 47 films by emerging black male directors from across the country. Continuing on Saturday, September 23rd and Sunday, September 24th. All events will be held at the Regal LA Live Cinemas, 1000 West Olympic Boulevard in downtown Los Angeles. Angeles. For more information and tickets, visit bherc.org. That's bherc.org or call 323-957-4656. That's 323-957-4656. Don't miss your chance to celebrate excellence in black cinema all weekend long at the Real Black Men Short Film Showcase. See you there.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look, and unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at the gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Extreme heat can make you very sick and can be deadly. For Californians 65 and over, it's important to have a plan. Ask your healthcare provider if your medications affect your ability to cool down. Know the signs of heat illness and stroke, as well as the location of your nearest cooling center or air-conditioned space. And if you have loved ones over 65, be sure to check in on them on hot days. Learn how to stay safer from extreme heat at heatreadyca.com. Brought to you by the state of California.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
Today's episode of First Things First with Dominique DePrima is brought to you by Wealth Management Financial Advisors. They're having a special webinar tonight. Owning real estate is a proven way to build wealth. That webinar will be tonight at 6:30 p.m. Meet Deidre Williams and learn how to make money using real estate. For more information, go to wealthmanagementlb.com. That's wealthmanagementlb.com. We are talking with noted historian and attorney LeGrand Clegg. I call it the Cleopatra controversy. Certainly, it stretches beyond that. And LeGrand Clegg made the compelling statement before News, Traffic, and Sports that Western science is not science. It's really a white supremacist cover-up. But certainly we rely on Western science for all kinds of things, from, fixing our broken legs to Googling things on our computer. So explain what you mean, really, when you say that.
In retrospect, that was far too sweeping a statement. What I meant to do was apply it to our discussion and the subject that is the center of our conversation today. And anthropology, archaeology, and history. They're all tarnished by the Eurocentric perspective. Other parts of science I cannot speak to. Other facets of it I can't speak to. But I can certainly speak to how Eurocentrism has diminished the perception of black people in the world, has diminished the reach and antiquity of our contributions, et cetera. And science is supposed to be objective.
Right.
Right. And rational and all of that. When it comes to one of the things I remember when I was a student, they would say things like, black people, you can be white and still be black. In other words, Mediterranean whites, Hamites, and all that. That made no sense to me then, and of course, we realize it's absolute madness today. They would claim people like the ancient Ethiopians were white, or the people of India, some of the blackest people in the world, are white. On and on and on. This provides a false illusion of superiority on the part of Eurocentric people, European people, and give people of color the sense of it minimizes the contributions and the antiquity of people of color. And what you have to do is get rid of all of that madness and start anew when you review Black history and culture. Again, I emphasize, I could talk about, for example, the ancient Egyptians traced their ancestry to the south. They call their land Kemet, the Black Land. Well, given the way the hieroglyphics are drawn, they would one would look at that and say, well, that means the black people of the black land. They interpret that to mean soil, all kinds of things like that they do to diminish the efficacy and the contributions and the influence of black people. When all of the cobwebs are removed, black people are the indigenous people on this planet. Black people laid the foundation of civilization. Civilization spread from Africa to Mesopotamia to India to China to the New World. And in all of those places, as one white scholar said, the further down you dig, the blacker things become. And that makes sense because the original people were African, you see. So when I say Western science is not science, I'm narrowly applying it to anthropology, archaeology, and history. Because with respect to black people in particular, it is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a provocative thing, but I've sat there in classes, and I remember getting into a giant fight in college with my theater teacher, theater history, because he fixed his mouth to say in the middle of our theater history class that Africa had not contributed to the theater, to the concept of theater, pageantry, drama, because they trace the beginnings of theater to the pageantry that comes out of the religious and spiritual practices. And I'm saying, is ancient Egypt? You're just leaving that out? I mean, it just infuriated me. And we had this battle, and finally, actually, he conceded that, well, if we are going to assume that there was a black or African factor in ancient Egypt, then I suppose there was a contribution by ancient black people to the theater. But he wouldn't even fully concede that there was blackness in ancient Egypt, and it's this concept we still say the Middle East, and so somehow we remove Egypt from Africa in that sense.
Well, you see, that is a part of the propaganda. It's very, I hate to use the word, scientifically, but in terms of the lies, it's scientifically set up. I'll never forget when I was a student at 19, again, the very year that I learned of the antiquity of black people and their contributions. I had I can't remember, I think it was art history class, just as you were saying, art. And the teacher actually went to the board and said, on the exam, it said, did the ancient Africans have a writing system? And I knew some Africans did, others didn't. And so when we were reviewing the exam, the professor mentioned the question, and he laughed and said, oh, no, of course not. Well, before I could challenge him, the white students challenged him. And they said, of course he did. They said, well, what Africans? He said, they said the Egyptians, the white students did. And he actually, Dominique, said Egypt was not in Africa, and went to the board and pointed to the modern so-called Middle East, where Israel and so forth, and that is where Egypt was. I mean, it's staggering, the level of lies and disinformation that Western science in this field has applied, and the entire world has embraced it. That is why the answer is for African people to independently, in Africa and here, present to our children what our past has been. And we have an excellent opening now that DeSantis and others are calling for book bannings and the elimination of the study of African history and so forth. Then we can step right in and replace it. As a matter of fact, I was reading on my phone that I think it's in Florida where there were a group of pastors who said that, well, we don't need to rely on the state school system. We'll teach our children our history in our churches. And I thought to myself, well, it's about time to follow.
Yeah. Well, this is not a new quest for you. All of these, reclaimings of our history is really what it is. They can call it blackwashing. And I've had people tell me, well, the scholars you're talking about are fringe. And so talk to me a little bit about the whole campaign that you did around King Tut and the King Tut exhibits, beautiful traveling exhibits.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say, what is fringe? If nothing could be more fringe, white supremacy and Eurocentrism.
Yeah.
And if you look at the entire scope of history, that is fringe and a blip on the radar screen. But back to King Tut. The Tut exhibit came originally to Los Angeles in 1978. It came again in 2005, and it came recently to the Science Museum in 2018, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it at the time when it first appeared, by then I was completely aware of the history of Black people and outraged by the persistent lies. And so this was the perfect opportunity to reveal, because at that time, Dominique, very few people associated ancient Egypt with Blackness or the Egyptians, all that. And so the exhibit came to Los Angeles, and we formed the Black King Tut Committee. And we were on every television station, radio, and they invited us, because, the media likes controversy. And so we presented ourselves. I was even debating Egyptologists, and I wiped them out. And I say that because, first of all, our evidence was so solid. And it's even better now because they have the DNA studies of his mummy. And someone told me the other day they were depicting him as white somewhere. I mean, they've got the DNA evidence now. And the DNA evidence says that King Tut himself is 96% affinity through his DNA with the people of sub-Saharan Africa. His father, Akhenaten, 92%, and his mother, Nefertiti, 82%. Okay? So it's not as if they don't know. When the Tut exhibit first came, we had to rely on drawings and carvings, and we presented strong evidence then. But now they've got the evidence from the mummies, and they're still lying.
And they're still lying, because I went in 2018, and the picture that you see when you come in is a white face. And all throughout, I'm reading the things, and I'm just getting so angry. I'm like enjoying these beautiful pieces of artwork, but I'm getting so angry because their script on the wall is denying what we see with our own eyes.
What happened? I know exactly what you're talking about. They have that drawing in the room. What happened was we took a group of about 50 Black people from my church and from the community at the time in 2005. And Masua Tir was there, and we had him the people. When I brought the group, we stood on the green and had him to lecture to the group before we went to the exhibit. And as he was speaking, one of the white administrators came up to me, and he said, "Oh, I'd love to welcome your group. Where are they from?" I told him Pilgrim Baptist Church, blah, blah, blah. And he said, "I'd love to." I said, "No, I'm not going to let you do that, because you have tried to deprive our children of the knowledge of their history by depicting the king as white. Unless you want to apologize for that, you will not have an opportunity to speak for our group." So informed the group of what I said, and they endorsed it.
Talking with Attorney LeGrand Clegg, the Cleopatra controversy. You said things have gotten a little better. Let's talk about how when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here with a quick recap from my time at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. There were speakers Ian Dunlap, Damon John, Lynn Richardson, MC Light, Don Kennedy, to name a few. Take a listen to what Justin Grant, Community Development Lead at Chase's Advancing Black Pathway, let's see what he had to say.
So I'm Justin Grant. I lead community development and national partnerships for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Pathway strategy. And so we're focused on strengthening the economic foundation of Black communities, and we're making targeted investments in programs like the Advancing Black Wealth Tour to help us get our tools and resources out to the community to drive sustained impact over time.
So when it comes to Black and brown people, it sounds like Chase is making it their personal responsibility not only to facilitate these events, but to educate and provide resources. So, Mr. Grant, I have to ask, what does wealth building look like for the individual?
It's home ownership. It's having that freedom to be able to start your own business and create jobs in your community. And it's having that long-term plan towards retirement, having that vision for what you want your life to be, and you have the resources to actually live it.
I'm Aisha Cairo. Thanks for sticking around. That was my recap from Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. First stop was here in LA, and they're taking it national.
Did you know addiction to drugs like meth or cocaine is a disease and not a choice? But getting help is. If you have stimulant use disorder, you, your family, and friends may have a lot of questions, including where to start. Choose Change California can help. Make a change today and find a proven treatment option for you at choosechangeca.org.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio. KBLA Talk 1580.
Talking with Attorney LeGrand Clegg. I had a very young high school teacher teach my child about Imhotep, and I almost fell out of my chair. I said, "Oh, okay." This young white teacher felt it was important to talk about the contributions of ancient Africans to world civilization and science, and used Imhotep as an example. I was very surprised by that, and it gave me the sense that at least for younger generations, some in the younger generations, things are getting better. You referenced that as well, and I wonder what gives you that feeling.
I appreciate that. I'm so glad that he did. First of all, a book about Imhotep. There's an excellent book on it by two white authors, the aerophysicist Tom Brophy and the Egyptologist Robert Bauval, about Imhotep. It is comprehensive and outstanding, and they depict him as black. There is glacial movement. There has been over the last, say, 30 years because of our agitation, protests, and appeals through the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, the work of Menu and Pym and Matthew Attorney, just countless others who are resisting or fighting against this widespread denial. And that is why, I assume that's why DeSantis and them are such a frenzy to counter this. Well, they may as well they're going against the grain because we're resurrecting the truth. Now, an example again of this, Dominique, was when they presented the relics of the King Tut exhibit, a new King Tut exhibit at the Science Center. It was coincidental at the time when we were meeting at the Association of Study of Classical African Civilization, and so they did not depict him as black. And when you see the actual replica of his mummy, it is coal black.
Right, and beautiful.
Anyway, but our whole point was you need to talk. See, given the degradation and the suppression, you need to affirmatively say this was a black pharaoh.
Right, exactly.
Suggestions and all that are not enough. But anyway, so American Express was the only sponsor we knew of the exhibit. And in the tradition of Dr. King and the Montgomery boycott movement, I went to our meeting in, I think it was in Ohio or somewhere, New York or somewhere. Anyway, and I handed out letters to American Express speaking of the failure of the exhibit to inform the public the king was black, and saying that if you do not, we will boycott American Express. And when I came back, one of my friends who worked there said, LeGrand, they corrected that. American Express has withdrawn, okay? And Dr. King told us about that power, and that's what we need to look at. And I hope that you'll have some of our scholars on to talk about the importance of not just boycotting, but threatening to boycott in terms of our movement. But anyway,
absolutely, I would love to. I would love to.
They erected this huge statue. There are two statues that were found in his tomb that are coal black, and they erected that at the entrance of the exhibit. I mean, it spoke volumes, and that was just the power of our protest. Now, 40 years ago, they would not have done that. As a matter of fact, when they raised the issue in the Los Angeles Times, then with one of the docents over at at the exhibit, he said, well, people are saying that he was a woman, maligning or deriding what we were saying. Well, I don't know if that man's still alive, but the evidence now is overwhelming. But when did evidence, as you said a minute ago, get in the way of facts? Evidence, when you have as people have said before, it's true. When you tell a lie over and over and over and over, it's hard for people to believe the truth. And that's what has happened with respect to ancient Egypt.
When we come forward, we'll get some last thoughts, something to ponder, maybe a call to action from attorney and historian LeGrand Clegg, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Have you heard about Lendistry? Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered right here in LA. Once you've started your business, Lendistry provides flexible financing options starting at $50,000 to help you access the affordable capital needed to grow. Whether financing is needed to increase working capital, acquire a business, purchase inventory and equipment, or refinance debt, Lendistry has a solution for you. Lending products range from traditional business term loans and non-revolving lines of credit to SBA 7A loans and commercial real estate financing. Lendistry's pre-application process is simple and does not impact your credit score. Visit lendistry.com/KBLA to learn more and to get started with an application right from the website.
The conversation continues right now with Dominic DePrima on First Things First.
Attorney LeGrand Clegg, noted historian LeGrand Clegg. What do you want to share with us this morning to send us on the rest of our hump day?
Well, I do want to inform you very soon we're coming out with a Black History channel, which we hope to be a source of authentic Black information which cannot be found elsewhere for people Black. And I'll come back, hopefully, on your show to elaborate on it once we have it off the ground.
Absolutely, yeah.
I also want people, I don't know how to get in touch with Jada Pinkett, but reinforce that sister. I mean, she's done something that completely opposes all the propaganda of 500 years of Western science. And we need to support her. Let her know that, sister, we have your back. And I'm going to try to reach her somehow.
We've been trying. We've been working on it, LeGrand Clegg. We want to get her on the show. It's not all about red table talk and entanglements. This woman has used her Hollywood clout to do this important historical series called The Black Queens on Netflix, and I would encourage you to see it. And I agree with you, LeGrand Clegg, to support Jada Pinkett Smith by making it known that we love this. Somebody else might not, but we love this, and we want to see more like it.
And that is particularly since so many people attacked her. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is if people are interested in helping to change the curricula and the overall view of Black history, they can reach me at my office, 562-624-2857. 562-624-2857. Because, see, as Dr. King told us, when we show united clout, things change. And they are, as your son showed in the class, some people are changing by virtue of pressure and by virtue of the increased information that's out. A lot of people don't know the books that are available or the tapes that are available. We can give them information with respect to that.
Yes, well, I appreciate you so much for all the work you're doing, LeGrand Clegg, and I thank you for sharing it with us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the honor.
Indeed, and speaking of honors, it is Virgo season. We are honoring our fearless leader. It is the birthday of one Tavis Smiley. Please distract him all day today by calling him, showing him some love, giving him a hug, wishing him a happy birthday, a cake, a cupcake, I don't know, whatever, any kind of treats you got going on. We appreciate you so much, Tavis. Your Virgo energy is what makes everything just so on this radio station that has given us the drive through your ambition and your focus to make this platform a reality and allow it to serve the community. So a big Virgo season happy birthday going out today to the one and only Mr. Tavis Smiley. I hope you will join me in wishing him the best solar return ever. He's up next, by the way. Yeah, he's working on his birthday. He'll be on the mic with an excellent show for you. I'm Dominique DePrima. History is now, and we are making it together. And if you missed the History On podcast, well, find them wherever you get your podcasts. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In California, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors is agreeing to a $4.75 million settlement to resolve a civil rights lawsuit. A black man filed the lawsuit in June of